Like, it was just crazy with that, and I can definitely see where it's gotta be easy to use.
Right.
I mean,
So yeah,
how many games have you downloaded on your phone and delete it in 15 minutes because it just didn't make sense or it was dumb and it didn't do you know what I mean? Like
100%. Yeah, like doubling down on what you brought up is essentially if you look at the complications of softwares that exist, it's almost created this duplicative effort, right? Where you're doing, okay, now you're going to do it on the software, but then you're also going to continue to print it because, that's the way that we were used to, producing the materials that we needed to produce. So, and to your point of games on your phone, you just delete what ends up being complicated. You just don't use what ends up being complicated. So going back to that core concept, right, is to say, let's address the complication while allowing for productivity, right? So create a simplified product, address the baseline, create this backbone tech stack of digital transformation, and then let's move on from there.
and then through that process, you're adding value.
Absolutely, yeah. So similar to all of the statistics that one could really easily find about productivity and how it's gained from digital transformation. So it's that same concept in a simplified manner, right? So it's creating like I just said, right, this backbone of digital transformation for your company. I mean, we've done this in quite literally an hour for organizations, and it almost feels shocking when I say that, just because we've come to have this perception that's ingrained in us now that creating digital transformation or adopting a product as a solution is this complicated, heavy lift that's going to take forever. I mean, in reality, it doesn't have to be. It just doesn't have to be that way. Think about when you get a new phone. There's simple ways of bringing it up to speed. There's simple ways of starting to use it because it's new tech, and now we're as a whole, just as people, right? We're used to using technology.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I started using MicroStation has been my CAD platform that I've used a majority of
Mhm.
my career, and it came with if you printed out all the manuals, it were like 6 or 7 3-inch binders
Yeah,
of
yeah.
just and now they don't even produce it. The instructions, the help is more integrated and it's more intuitive because the people
Mhm.
that are even the youngest, but even I mean, I'm 40, so in that mid-career level, we grew
Mhm.
up with PlayStation, Nintendo, and learning those games and learning the technology on the fly. So the more that it's integrated, I think
Totally.
the easier it is for everybody my age and younger to definitely embrace. And
Totally.
it's just I can definitely see how that's very helpful. But what kind of key friction points have you faced or that you see that industry professionals face in the process of adopting these ideas?
For sure. I mean, you actually noted on something that's really interesting and kind of ties into the question as well, is to point out that, it's really starting to be just across all industries, right? This change of guard, I'll call it, right? I think that's a saying that people understand where, decision makers, just the general workforce, everybody that's working has some relatability to tech from, childhood or close to it, right? So that's all to say that it's inevitable that adoption is going to occur because it must in order to increase productivity, to create collaboration, to track, to own data, all these important elements that exist in basically every industry. Um, so to kind of wrap back into the question that you asked as it relates to friction, I've in my own experience, coming from the construction space, and then now in my experience on the tech side, similar frictions that I see exist, and I bring it back to these legacy products. This is my like saying, right? These legacy products created an amazing kind of awareness of technology. However, at the same time, they've also ingrained this like preconceived notion that it's a friction filled process, right? That you need certifications to onboard project management tools, that you need this lengthy training to implement it across your company, that each feature set is this complicated process to add onto or to refine. So pulling away from that, right? I'll break it down into a few things. One is um, understanding, right? So onboarding and training for a product. So I'll go back to a smartphone, right? If you think you know how to use a smartphone, if you think that your colleagues or your employees know how to use a smartphone, then you should know how to use your, baseline project management tool, right? That's one. Two is in terms of implementation across your organization. First and foremost, if that actually is some heavy lift, then start small, right? Start on one project, start on one division, start on one area, however it is that you want to kind of conceive of it. So that's that second layer of friction is start small, start in an easy manner to then roll out over time. And then the third thing happens to be price point in terms of frictions, um, where legacy products are typically pricing based on percentages of your project cost. And that's something that I know coming from the industry, the builders I worked for really, really hated. And, we've moved away from that as well as a solution. So to kind of wrap that up, I said three things. One is call it onboarding or training. That's one friction. The second friction is adoption across the company. And then third is price point.
Okay. And the more that you can smooth those, obviously the
Mhm.
less friction, the more adoption, the more embracing, the more positive feedback. Um, and not necessarily to you, but the positive internal feedback
Mhm.
that it's this is not a waste of my time,
Totally.
and that it's actually helpful, and I'm not redundantly doing things.
Yeah, totally.
And you may have touched on this, and I think you probably caught it, but I have a note here about like the productivity gap in the
Mhm.
industry, and that how do we overcome that hesitation to adopt new things